So before we can talk about selling with insights, we really have to understand, the changes in the buyer and the buyer behavior. And I won't bore you with a great deal of detail because we all know that the buyers, as a result of everything around us, have more power, have more knowledge, have prepared more, engage us later, and that is a challenge. That is a significant challenge. And all of these great ideas that we hear about are wonderful, and we each have to change ourselves in order to show up differently. But when you think about your own sales organization, as small or as large as it is, that is not something that just happens with the snap of a finger. You just don't tell someone this is what you need to do and expect them to do it differently. It takes practice, it takes skill, it takes effort. So the buyers obviously have more power, puts us in a compromised position. Why do they have more power? Just very quickly, it starts with all of the information around us. And I picked up a couple of data points that I thought I would share. Buyers are clearly using social media, and you can see this slide says up to 83%, almost 100% of buyers in North America use social media in their buying process, right? This was an IDC study on social buying behavior. So it's not just they're out there looking around for ideas or they're looking around to entertain themselves. They're looking and using social media as part of the journey, part of the buying journey. And what they're doing, they're out there looking for knowledge. They're looking for options. They're evaluating their own thinking. And then certainly they're evaluating providers. Even more interesting is that the right-hand circle, CXOs, executive buyers, 2/3 of those buyers are using social media to drill down and understand the people within the organizations that they work with or that they're considering as a provider. That's significant. That's every one of you in this room as an executive or a CXO spending your time individually evaluating before ever engaging with a prospective provider. I find that to be fairly significant. What does that manifest, right? What does that look like as a result of that changed behavior? You can see this chart, and this comes from Forrester research. And again, probably not new to most of you, but certainly the numbers keep growing. Forrester now reports 60 to 90% of the buying cycle, right? Not, we're all, those of us who are sellers, right? Think of us, you think of the selling cycle. They're one and the same, which is just a different lens. 60 to 90% of the buyer cycle occurs before the first time they make contact with a prospective provider. So think about it just for a minute. If your organization typically had a 6-month sales cycle, and well, we won't even go to 90 because it seems absurd. If you went to 60% of it occurring before you ever get engagement, that leaves very little time. What does that leave? 48 days in a sales cycle, right? For you between first contact and decision. That is a compressed period of time for you to differentiate, win business, differentiate, show your value, win business, right? So it's real. And just by a show of hands, how many would agree that, when you think about your own customers and prospects, that they would conform to this, that you would say that 60 to 90% of that buying cycle occurs before they contact you? Just a show of hands. So maybe half. Okay, fair enough. So how do they act differently? We did our own market research, and we found 5 just recently conducted in the past 3 weeks. We found 5 ways that buyers are clearly acting differently. And the first is that they're deliberately exploring their options, which we just looked at that chart, right? They're looking and they're mapping out where to look and then how they want to evaluate. So this deliberate exploration is something that is profoundly different. We see it in our own company. We work with 250 largest sales organizations as clients every year. So that, they change, obviously we win new business, but about 250 a year. And I will tell you that it's profoundly different for those organizations in their markets. It doesn't matter what segment of the industry, it doesn't matter whether it's a B2B or a B2C, they are grappling with the differences in buyer behavior. The second finding that we landed on is that what organizations or buyers are looking for is a collaborative approach. It's no longer, can I find one provider who will will meet my entire needs through one solution. They're literally putting providers together and forcing providers to collaborate in a best of brand or best of breed solution. The third is that the decision making is increasingly complex, rules-based decision making. Again, it makes sense if you think about the sequence of these items, is that if there's deliberate exploration and there's more stakeholders involved, then of course the decision is far more complex. No longer can you find one person who's going to make the decision to engage you. And fourth, proof of value. The impact needs to be demonstrated during the sale. I will tell you, I've been doing this for 22 years, and that over the last 3 to 4 years, it has completely changed. The sale has completely changed in that no longer do you prove your value when you're in delivery. It must be proven during the sale. You must demonstrate why it will work, how it will work, and be able to link it to what kind of ROI or return will occur for your customer. And I think the most significant or the most profound for me finding of our study was that the discussions about the solution will continue post-sale. In fact, they're greater than ever. In our own business, we're finding this to be most prevalent. And again, if I connect the dots a bit, if you have a shorter period of time between first contact and decision, then the sale and the value can tend to be more conceptual than they would be otherwise, because we haven't, as sellers, had the chance to do the discovery that we might otherwise do. So we're selling a solution that's based on an assumed set of needs, or maybe somewhat informed set of needs, and therefore, as you go into implementation, you're finding the conversations about the solution, its fit and its value continuing. That's a challenge, right? That's a challenge, and it often results in a significant amount of overinvestment for providers. So that's how they're engaging. Buyers are engaging. Buyers feel differently as well. Let's look at a couple of stats, and I've used these before, and they generally get a good nod of a head and a good laugh. Forrester, 1 in 10% of executives say they get value from meeting with salespeople. Show of hands, would you agree that that's a fair percentage in your businesses? Okay. Second stat, 17% of executives give a second meeting to a salesperson. So what that says to me is we're not good enough and we're only getting one chance. So now let's look at it through the lens of the seller's organization. The number one reason, Serious Decisions reports, the number one reason sales reps miss quota is their inability to articulate value. So if I put that stat first, I would tell you that your salespeople aren't good enough, your clients know it, and you get one chance. That's not a playing field that we want to find ourselves in. Let's look at our opportunity. So they engage differently, they feel differently. What's the opportunity in this environment for sellers? The opportunity is we could sit there in that period between first contact and decision and respond. We could react and respond. It's a dangerous place to be. If you're a company that has no competition, or you're clearly best in class and you know your strength, then maybe it's a gift. I don't have to go through that entire journey. I only have to go through the abbreviated journey. We're not a company that is without competition, and I doubt anyone in this room would find themselves in that place. So what do we do? So we have an opportunity as sellers. Gerhard talked about this. His subject matter experts in his videos talked about it. Those in the audience who had a chance also talked about it. We need to push back into this journey that is going on with our clients and our prospects before they reach us, and shape and create the opportunities. Shape is really is a situation where you want to disrupt the thinking, you want to influence their thinking, you want to bring them insights. Create is a mode of selling that we would teach that says you really need to get all the way back and engage before they've even thought about going out to evaluate their options for improving their own organizations. So how do we do that? Right? So how do we do that? The Challenger book says go in and disrupt your customers' thinking. Richardson has a program called Selling with Insights. Many ways, and all of the technology providers who are supporting selling and marketing today are giving us data and approaches and ways in which to do just that. But how does it come down and manifest itself at the salesperson level? How do you go out differently and begin to sell with insight? Well, an insight, as we will find momentarily, is not information, or at least in our view, is not information. It's not data. It's what comes from sharing that information and data. So just to put it in a little context, I Googled insights, the word insights, and there are 230 million responses. And I Googled selling with insights, and there are 73 million responses. So it's a concept. It's clear that selling with insights is an opportunity to show up differently and really be thinking about your customer's business and do it in a manner that is for their benefit. But 73 million responses scares me, because it says it's largely undefined. It's still conceptual in its own nature. So I ask at this point, and I'm going to ask for some audience participation, what is an insight in your opinion? What is an insight?
Like you already have the answer inside yourself, or you connect to that answer.
Okay, thank you. Others, right here.
In a sales environment, insight is having an understanding of the customer in such a way that when you have dialogue with them, they begin to think about their situation or business differently.
So do you have an example of that?
If you look at a business problem, let's take, for example, just take you outside of this that nobody's probably in. There's no dentists in the room. Is that true, or dental hygienists?
I think there might be, actually.
So dental hygienists have a challenge that as they complete their work, they naturally get carpal tunnel syndrome because of the way they're using their hands and so forth. What then causes them to take days off of work, which then causes all the things that happen when people aren't there to clean people's teeth, right? Mm-hmm. So you can think about that and say, gee, what do I need to do? I need to maybe reduce their hours. Maybe I need to get another dental hygienist so that they're not doing this so much, which costs me more. Or do I look at the tools that they're using and maybe recraft them so that their hands are in a position such that they don't get carpal tunnel syndrome? So now I'm thinking about that problem differently for that situation.
Perfect, thank you. That's perfect. So if you manufacture dental equipment as a salesperson, you have the opportunity to walk in and talk about the consequence. What I heard you say, and I'm Dave, by the way. Frank, thank you for that. You have the opportunity to talk about the impact on the dentist's practice, not just from the equipment, but from the impact or the outcome of using equipment that causes carpal tunnel which then causes absenteeism, which then causes all kinds of problems, for the practice itself. So that's a perfect example of an insight. One more? Right here. Now tell us the name of your company again.
The name of my company is Idea House.
All right, so of course he's going to have an insight, right? Idea House.
Yeah. One of the things that we see more, as we call it, big data, call it whatever we've had information about prospects, suspects for years. Mm-hmm. So we have data, but, and that gives us knowledge. We know who's buying our products, when they're buying them in the cycle, et cetera. But I think where you're getting with insights is that we start looking at the data and we're deriving wisdom from the data.
Great word.
And not to jump off on a great bumper sticker that you probably saw the difference between knowledge and wisdom, et cetera. But I think that's the big difference. We have all this data. We've always had the ability to collect data, but what have we done with it? And I think it's only until recently that we're deriving wisdom from this data, mm-hmm. which points us in a better direction than we've been.
Thank you. That's a great point, is that wisdom is really another word for what I'm describing here. Data is important. It's how we can connect dots and bring wisdom or bring insight or bring idea that is outside of a product or service. So let's just take a look at how we would define what an insight is, and I think you just did. It's information or perspective. That's another word. Perspective that's based on credible research, your own, external, that comes from experience. It's personalized to the buyer, just like we heard in the example of the dentist practice. It's very personal, and it makes sense for that business. So it's not just walking in and sharing some information that may pertain to the buyer, but you need to personalize it. It opens the buyer's mind, right? It opens the opportunity to think differently. You know, again, some of the prevailing content in the Challenger sale would say you want to disrupt the thinking. I don't believe it necessarily has to disrupt the thinking. It could influence it. It could give them an idea. It creates energy. It's not just disruption. And finally, it builds urgency. The most important thing as a salesperson in using insight is that you want it to create urgency for them to act. And of course, you want them to act by engaging you or buying your product or your service. I put this slide up because insight, we could talk all day long about what it means and what it is, but just look at the terms that have been used to describe insight selling. It's agile selling, guided selling, value selling, new models, clever, change, discovery, bright. These are things that are intuitively, logical to all of us, but where it falls apart and where we see it in training our client sales forces is, now go out and do it. How do you equip the salesperson to actually do this in real time, in the real pressure of a sales situation, right? It's okay to talk about it here. It's okay to read about it. It all makes sense. But sit in a one-on-one situation and try to sell with an insight. There are risks to doing it. Clearly, rewards are evident, but there are risks. And the proof of this is 70% of US executives feel the skills in the sales force that they have today don't exist to sell with insight. It is different. The danger, as I'll get to, is that it's almost, you might find yourself going back 20 years and thinking about, I'm going to do a product dump, right? The product dump just happens to be an information or a data dump, right? Where does that lead you? It leads you nowhere fast. So there are 3 reasons why they matter. And we've talked about these and we've heard about these both in Gerhard's presentation and some of the comments that, that those of you have shared. First is that the buyers know more, right? We need to level the playing field, right? Because in my opinion, much of what, at least our clients are discovering when they're out doing this 60 to 90% of their buying journey may not be, just because you see something on the internet or read a study or find some relevant information doesn't make it right, doesn't make it accurate, doesn't make it relevant. They know more, so we need to level that playing field and bring back to them relevant help, if you will. We need to offset the competition. It's greater than it's ever been. How do you differentiate yourself relative to your competition, especially in that shortened, 40 to 10% period of that sales cycle? And finally, we need to plant the seeds for value. And that's where, selling with an insight is most essential. Where do they come from? So again, where do insights come from? They come from, most of what I hear in the marketplace regarding insights is that they come from research. We read something, just like I'm sharing today. I'm sharing with some research from IDC and Forrester and Sirius about the impact on the way we're selling or the way buyers are thinking. So clearly research. It's got to be credible, so a credible source. If you have your own research, the danger is do people look at you that you've created your own research for your own purposes, right? I've created this great research and here are the findings and oh, by the way, it leads right back to my product and service. That's not credible, right? So that's, as a competitor to corporate executive board, the Challenger sale, you hear that argument all the time. Well, they wrote this book about the Challenger sale because it led right back to engaging them to help you write an insight and be disruptive. Experience, as Jimi Hendrix would say, right? Experience and industry expertise. I think this is the greatest source of insight. We've been all in the business world for quite some time, those of us longer than others, and your own experience with your other clients and your partners and et cetera can be brought to bear with a prospect and a buyer in a manner that makes sense. Selling with insight, by the way, is not new. And when you think about where it's existed forever, any professional services firm, a management consulting firm, a Big Four accounting firm, a law firm, any of your top performers or your executives in your own company are walking insights. They sell through their own experience. I spent 10 years at PwC, and the way in which we won new business was by bringing them ideas about how to improve their business, whether it was from an operational, a tax, perspective or otherwise, but it was literally, that's the way you won business. You differentiated yourself through your ideas and your insights. Innovation, we heard all about innovation, so I won't dive into that one too much. And then finally, the knowledge of your customer's business. Your own knowledge of your existing customers is a great source of insight. If you understand their business well enough, you can help them think differently about it, because we're all, as Gerhard said, as leaders in companies, you've got arrows coming at you left and right. You've got the financial pressures, and the client pressures, and your employee pressures. So helping them think differently is clearly a form of insight. So being from Philadelphia, I had to find a way to get an Eagles reference into my presentation, right? So Chip Kelly is the second-year coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. Anyone know where he spent his college career coaching? Oregon. Okay. So anyone know anything about it? So tell me what unique part of the Oregon football program. What's unique about the Oregon football program? It's nonstop, right? So Chip Kelly's practices. He comes to Philadelphia and he says, "I'm going to change the way the team practices." Right? And we're not talking college kids. We're talking about pros, and we are going to maximize time. And that means that we're going to put speakers on a field. We're going to turn them up full blast, and we are literally going to have our players sprinting from drill to drill to drill. There'll be no interaction with a coach other than a whistle or an air horn. The objective to maximize repetition. Simulate the speed of a practice more so than what you'll experience in the game itself. Where does the coaching take place? In the film room. So historically, football teams would coach on the field. You'd run a drill, you'd say, "Hey, you didn't do something right, let's tell you how to do it differently. You're wasting time." So Chip Kelly, through his innovation, has created an environment or an approach to the game where the Eagles run more plays than any other team in the course of a game. And if you are a football fan, in the first 2 games of this year have been down significantly at halftime, but have come back to win these games because the stamina of the other team playing at that pace, they literally wear the opponent down to the point where the way they're playing and the speed in which they're playing, because they practice that way, is so much faster and better than the other team. It's innovation. So let's talk about risks and rewards. So insights used effectively do the following things. Right? One of the things that I think is most important to us today is how aware are we of executive buyer behavior? I just showed you a bunch of stuff that said that's different. So how do your salespeople fully understand the executive buying behavior and the buying influences? So using insights will help you uncover some of those. Clearly, you engage in capability conversations, not feature and benefit conversations. It's very essential that a sales force understand its capabilities and unique differentiators. Well, bringing insight allows you to do some of that. I'm going to skip forward because for the sake of time. A properly used insight, as I thought about this, if we're using insights properly, it's akin to getting a get-out-of-jail-free card if you're playing the game of Monopoly. Even if you don't earn the sale in that moment, if what you've brought to the table is of value and stimulates the thinking of your customer, you're literally getting some kind of value back to you. And it's like getting out of jail. I may need to use that later. I'll draw on that experience later. Let's take a look at the kinds of responses you might hear when you use an insight well.
Us talking about this. Conducted.
That's interesting.
I hadn't thought of that, actually.
I've been thinking about that, but I'm not sure how to evaluate the potential. You have any ideas?
I didn't realize companies were taking that approach. Tell me more.
I hadn't thought about the risk of actually not doing that.
My boss was just talking about this.
So what you see there is the mind being opened to your customer's mind opening up, right? You're bringing them something that they hadn't thought about. I like the second to the last one where he said, "I hadn't thought about the impact of not doing something," right? What's the risk of not acting, right? So let's take a look at, obviously, when you use an insight ineffectively, credibility, right? So the scariest thing is you've got this great idea, this great insight. I'm going to walk in, I'm going to disrupt the thinking of my customer, and you lay it out on the table, and they look at you and say, "That doesn't work here," right? Now what? You're in the sale. You're in the moment. So now what? Lost credibility, arrogance, you invite objections. You miss the connection, you lose the opportunity. Take a look. And what that does, if you're playing Monopoly, go directly to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200 million, right? Do not make the sale. So what might you hear if you use an insight poorly?
To sell with insights? That article too.
That's funny. Your competition shared that with me yesterday.
Really? That regulation changed last year.
Great idea, but we're doing that already.
Next.
That's not really relevant to me.
Is that your attempt to sell with insights?
So as funny as that might sound, literally that's what you're inviting. You're inviting the objection. Now, as a organization that's, as a sales training organization, we would say an objection is an invitation to have more dialogue. So really, one of the key things that I would say to you here is that is what an insight offers. Sure, you're going to open the mind, you're going to create some dialogue, you're stimulating something, but what you're really doing is you're provoking dialogue. And once you provoke dialogue, you're right back into selling the way we all learn to sell, which is the chance to uncover need, the chance to get deeper into the discussion, and the chance to connect your opportunity. So it all comes together in the customer conversation. I've got 1 minute, so I'm sorry, I'm going to go fast. When are they best used? Here's what I just was referring to. We've all learned that it's best to ask a lot of questions when you're out selling, right? The more you know, the better you can position. Well, when you're sharing an insight, you're doing the talking. So, you ever hear the phrase, can't chew gum and walk at the same time? Well, that's what sharing and that's what asking and sharing present. It presents a conundrum to a salesperson because you don't want to be doing the talking when you're in front of your customers trying to sell. You want them to be doing the talking. Obviously, question-led, insight-led. And listening is really where you're going to, the challenge, I think, if there is one, is really knowing when to talk and when to listen. Let's keep going. So I'm going to skip through these. This is the model that we would teach you. This would be the model we would teach you in a classroom, which would say, look, you can show up at the table with two things. There are only two things that go on in any sale. The seller's got capabilities and differentiators. The buyer's got challenges, opportunities, which ultimately result in have impact to them and a need. Those are the only two things that are going on. So how you navigate, an insight doesn't mean I have to always start on the left and know all about the challenges and the opportunities. I can start on the right with my capabilities and differentiators. I just need to do it in a way that creates a personalized message using that information or data to bring insight so that I get the aha, someone said it, the aha moment earlier where the customer says, boy, I hadn't thought about that. Tell me more. Blueprint form, what we would show, and I think this is key to really bringing all of this down into the sales force, is you need to give them a structure or a blueprint. And these are the types of items that we believe should be covered. Think about the challenges. So we have a blueprint form, whether it's marketing, whether it's an outside provider who's helping you create these insights. Challenges, opportunities, the impact of doing or not doing, the need that results from that, the first two. What are your capabilities and differentiators that match? What is the selected source of insight, or what is the selected source of information? Is it research? Is it experience? Is it credible? What's the desired aha moment you want to achieve? Thinking about this ahead. And then what might you expect as objections? And then possible resolutions. I had 4 examples, 4 case studies. I'm going to skip right through them because for sake of time. And just to summarize, clearly buying behavior's changed. Selling's more challenging, right, Alice? Values must be proven in a sale. Differentiation is essential. That's where insights come in. It gives you the chance to differentiate. They're powerful, but they present risks. And finally, the shape and create opportunities are really where you can use an insight most effectively. And the customer conversation is the moment of truth. So with that, I'll say thank you for the time.
Excellent, excellent.
Thank you.